We will be continuing with our topic of 10 major steps in the diversification of life. The next adaptation that we are going to discuss is the predation. As the name indicates, it is the relationship of an organism which feeds on the other organisms. That means that organism kills and feeds on the other organism. And the late Precambrian Ediacara fauna was soft bodied, and it appears likely that predators and scavengers were absent in that Precambrian Ediacara. So, what happened that this changed during the early Cambrian? And in the early Cambrian, predation was an important part of ecosystem. The rapid diversification, armored and protective strategies was a feature of Cambrian radiation. So there was some exoskeletons and the organisms which were soft-shelled, soft-bodied earlier. They developed some very hard calcareous or siliceous shells to protect themselves from being eaten, and that led to the Cambrian radiation. So this is also an example of adaptive radiation. And then there happens the biological reef. Biological means that these are made up of living organism, and reefs are just like any hard calcareous or siliceous structures which are found even today in the marine environment. Marine equivalent of the tropical rainforest, as we see that the rainforest have very large biodiversity. They have a lot of species of animals and plants. Same happens with the biological reefs because it contains the marine species. There are a lot of photosynthesizing and as well as the different other organisms which are living on them. Modern reefs are highly diverse, colorful frameworks of brain, horn, stoghorn corals, together with the organ pipes, sea fans, and sea whips. So these are the modern reefs which are present even today. And they throughout the Phanerozoic, the modern reef builder have changed with the major changes punctuated by the mass extinction. If we see their history of the reef, there are some major organisms which were making reefs in one era, one period, and then they changed after the species went extinct. The new species took their place and they formed their own reefs and so on. So this has happened throughout the history of the planet or the marine environment. The first reefal framework appeared during the early Cambrian. So this was the adaptation 6, and then there are the adaptation 7, which is the terrestrialization. The terrestrialization means that the living on the land environment. So earlier the life was formed in the oceans, in the marine environment, and it progressed further in onto the land. The colonization of land added major new environment to those previously occupied by the life, right? So it is hard to date the first move of life on the land, but we can see some plants and some animals which were first to come on the land, and that too was due to the adaptive radiation because they produce some features. For example, the adaptation of plants to produce some vascular tissues, and the skeleton or the lungs, these were for the animals to live on the land environment. And the soil reported from the mid-Cambrian sequences, a microbial life extended a greenish scum around the water edges. So there were some Precambrian sequences which show that there was some greenish scum around the water edges in the soils. And then there are the Ordovician soils suggest that larger plant and animal had moved onto the land. So this was adaptation 7, in which the plants and animal they moved onto the land. And then there are the trees and forests. Next major expansion of living space on the land took place during the Carboniferous with the development of the forest. So Carboniferous was the period in which the whole earth was covered with the forests. The first tree-sized plant were present during the late Devonian period. So what is the significance of it? It created a vertical tiered range of new habitats. So if there is a tree, there was some organisms which are living in the roots, there are living on the stems, and there are organisms who are living on its upper parts of the tree. So trees with their long roots they gained access to nutrients that were not available to smaller plants. And the addition of new stories of vegetation, that means they have much more access to the light and other factors, and they were also providing much more habitat to the other organisms as well. And then there is the adaptation, which is flight. The expansion of land life was into the air. So from the water, life came to the land, and from the land it should go to the air. So it has gone to the air as well in the form of flight. So evolution of trees led to this, because when the trees are there, to go from one tree to another, there must be some flight. So there were some insects, having insects group to move off to the ground in search of edible leaves, fruits. Gliding and true flight became inevitable. So insects were one of those organisms who developed the flight, as well as the other vertebrates as well. So insects arose in the early Devonian, but first two flyers are Carboniferous in age. The flight has doubtless been the clue to the vast success of insects. We know that 70% of the biodiversity of animals is coming from the plant. So, coming from the insects. So that means the insects, the flight of insect have been playing a major role in doing this. And flight has arisen more than 30 times among vertebrates. So independently, the flighting behavior has been developed among the vertebrates 30 times, more than 30 times. And then there is the last but not the least very important adaptation, which is consciousness. We know what we are. Not a lot of organisms know that. So human beings have probably to feature somewhere in a list of major biotic advances. So what we are doing now, we are questioning our existence, why we are here. So that is consciousness, and the human being in the history of life are the first organisms to question this question. So how to view the role of human in evolution have been a question that has dogged philosophers for centuries. So what is our role in the evolution? We don't know yet, and we have been discussing this for centuries.